Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into a world where your job sounds simple. Carry a message from one place to another, but the moment you take your first step, you realise it might be the last journey you ever make. You're standing on a dirt road that stretches into the distance, swallowed by fog and uncertainty, and somewhere far ahead, armies are already clashing. Steel meets steel, banners fall, and decisions, tiny, fragile decisions, depend entirely on whether you arrive in time. No pressure, right? You probably won't survive this, but hey, at least you won't have to worry about deadlines anymore. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, go ahead and comment your location and local time. I always find it fascinating to see where everyone is listening from as we drift through history together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't remember volunteering for this. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you were chosen because you were fast, or because you didn't look important enough to matter. In medieval warfare, that's often exactly what makes you valuable. Not strength, not armour, not even loyalty in the heroic sense, just the ability to move quickly, quietly, and without drawing attention. The message you carry is sealed with wax, pressed with the insignia of a lord whose name carries weight far beyond your own. You're told not to open it, not to even think about opening it. Of course, that only makes it more tempting. But temptation is a luxury you can't afford. People have been executed for less. You tuck it safely inside your tunic, close enough to feel its presence with every breath. Historians still argue whether medieval messengers fully understood the importance of what they carried, or if they were deliberately kept in the dark. Some suggest ignorance was a form of protection. After all, you can't betray what you don't know. Others believe many messengers piece things together over time, reading patterns in urgency, direction, and tone. Right now, though, you don't need to understand the message to feel its weight. It presses against your chest like a second heartbeat. The road beneath your feet is uneven, carved by wagon wheels and hardened by seasons of rain and drought. Every step kicks up dust, and every sound feels louder than it should. A snapping twig, a distant bird call. It all makes you pause, listening, waiting, wondering if you've already been noticed. Because that's the thing no one really tells you. You're not just travelling through a war, you are part of it. In fact, you might be one of the most vulnerable pieces on the board. There's a well-known historical fact that during many medieval conflicts, messengers were often deliberately targeted. Not because they were dangerous fighters, but because they carried something far more valuable than a sword: information. Interrupt the flow of communication, and you don't just slow an army down. You confuse it, divide it, sometimes even destroy it without ever needing to engage directly. And that means someone, somewhere, is hoping you don't make it. The wind shifts slightly, carrying with it the faint scent of smoke. Not the comforting kind from a hearth, but something harsher, sharper. Burned wood, maybe even burned fields. You've heard stories. Villages emptied, crops destroyed to starve advancing forces. War doesn't just happen on battlefields, it seeps into everything. You pull your cloak tighter, more out of instinct than cold. There's a strange, almost surreal quiet to the landscape. No shouting, no clashing armies, just open road and the occasional rustle of leaves. It would almost be peaceful if not for the constant awareness that peace here is temporary, fragile, illusory. A quirky little tidbit: some medieval messengers were known to carry small charms or tokens, bits of bone or carved wood, believed to ward off bad luck. Whether it actually helped is debatable. But when your survival depends on chance as much as skill, you tend to accept whatever comfort you can get. Maybe you have one too. You reach into your pocket, fingers brushing against something smooth and familiar. A small object, worn from handling. It doesn't change your situation. It doesn't make the roads safer, but it gives you something to hold on to, something steady in a world that feels anything but. The sky above is pale, washed out, offering no real sense of time. Hours pass, or maybe it's just one long, stretched-out moment. Your legs begin to ache, your breathing settling into a rhythm that's almost hypnotic. Step, step, step. You start to understand why this job isn't given to just anyone. It's not just about speed, it's about endurance, about continuing forward even when every instinct tells you to stop, to hide, to turn back. But turning back isn't an option. Not really. The people who sent you expect results, not excuses, and the people waiting on the other end, they might not even realise how much depends on your arrival. That's another strange truth. You matter more than anyone will ever admit, and less than anyone will ever remember. Somewhere in the distance, a crow calls out, its voice sharp and sudden. You freeze, scanning the horizon. Nothing moves, nothing obvious at least. But the feeling lingers, that subtle, creeping sense that you're not alone, that someone could be watching. You resume walking, a little faster now. The road narrows as it dips into a stretch of woodland, trees closing in on either side. Shadows deepen, the light filtering through leaves in uneven patches. It's cooler here, quieter, but also more dangerous. Visibility drops. Sounds echo strangely. Perfect place for an ambush. You tell yourself not to think like that, but you do anyway. Historians still argue whether messengers preferred open roads or forest paths. Open terrain meant visibility but also exposure. Forests offered cover, but for both you and anyone who might want to stop you. There's no perfect choice, only trade-offs, and right now you're committed. The deeper you go, the more the outside world seems to fade, the sounds of distant life replaced by the subtle creaks and whispers of the trees. Your footsteps feel louder here, despite the soft earth beneath them. You adjust your grip on the small satchel at your side, even though the real prize is hidden closer to your chest. It's strange, isn't it? All this risk, all this tension, for a piece of parchment. But that parchment could carry orders to advance, or retreat. It could signal reinforcements, or abandonment. Entire lives, hundreds, maybe thousands, might hinge on whether you arrive in time. No wonder they don't send soldiers for this. Soldiers are too visible, too loud, too replaceable in the wrong way. You, on the other hand, are expected to slip through the cracks, to exist in that narrow space between notice and invisibility. Not quite important enough to guard heavily, but far too important to lose. A delicate balance, one you're still learning. As the path bends slightly, disappearing further into shadow, you take a slow breath. The air is damp, carrying the scent of moss and earth. For a brief moment, you let yourself imagine something else, a different life, a different path. One where your biggest concern isn't whether you'll make it to the next village alive. But that thought doesn't last long, because the reality is right here, beneath your feet, with every step forward. And there's no turning back now. The truth is, you were never meant to feel ready for this. No one gathers you into a grand hall and declares you a messenger with ceremony and applause. There's no proud moment where a sword is placed on your shoulder or a crowd cheers your name. Instead, it happens quietly, almost casually. Someone notices how fast you run, how long you can keep going without collapsing, how you don't ask too many questions, and just like that, you're chosen. Not for safety. Never for safety. For usefulness. You remember the first time someone tested you. It wasn't called a test, of course. Just a simple errand, they said. Take this to the next village. Don't stop, don't delay. You thought it sounded easy back then, even a little exciting. You learned quickly how wrong you were. Your legs ache now in a way that feels deeper than muscle, like the fatigue has settled into your bones. But this is exactly what they were looking for, the ability to keep moving even when your body starts to protest. Speed matters, yes, but endurance. Endurance is everything. There's a historical truth that might surprise you. Many medieval messengers weren't soldiers at all. They were often young men, sometimes even teenagers, chosen for their agility rather than their strength. In some regions, especially during prolonged conflicts, rulers relied on networks of civilian couriers who knew the land better than any armoured knight ever could. You fit that description more than you'd like to admit. Light on your feet, unremarkable in a crowd, easy to overlook, perfect. The path beneath you begins to slope upward, a gentle incline that gradually steals your breath. You adjust your pace, not slowing too much but enough to conserve energy. That's another thing they taught you, though taught might be too generous a word. You learned by watching others fail. Some pushed too hard at the beginning, sprinting as if the journey would be over in minutes. They burned out quickly, collapsing long before reaching their destination. Others hesitated too often, stopping at every sound, every shadow, until time slipped away from them. And in your line of work, Time is more dangerous than any blade. Historians still argue whether there were formal training systems for messengers, or if most of the knowledge was passed down informally. Some records suggest organised relay systems in certain kingdoms, early versions of postal routes where riders would swap horses to maintain speed. Others believe many messengers operated alone, relying purely on instinct and experience. Looking at you now, alone on this narrowing path, it feels like the latter. There's no one to guide you, no one to correct your mistakes, only the road, and whatever waits along it. You reach the top of the incline and pause for just a moment, not to rest, but to look. The land stretches out ahead in uneven patches of green and brown, fields broken by hedgerows and the occasional cluster of trees. In the far distance, you think you can make out movement. Too far to identify, too distant to understand. You don't linger. Standing still makes you nervous. There's a reason for that. A quiet, unsettling reality that settles into your thoughts as you continue forward. The longer you stay in one place, the easier you are to find. And being found rarely ends well. A strange little detail. Some messengers were instructed to memorize their routes using landmarks that wouldn't easily change. Not just roads or villages, but specific trees, oddly shaped rocks, bends in rivers. In a time without reliable maps, your memory becomes your greatest tool. You try to do the same. That crooked tree back there, the way the road splits slightly before rejoining. The faint outline of a distant hill. You store it all away, building a mental map that might save your life if you ever need to retrace your steps, or run. Your hand instinctively brushes against your chest again, checking for the message. Still there, still sealed, still carrying a weight far greater than its size. You've been told more than once what happens if you lose it. The consequences are never described in detail. They don't have to be. You've seen enough to understand. A breeze moves across the land, cooler now, carrying with it the faint rustle of tall grass. It almost sounds like whispers, soft, constant, just at the edge of hearing. For a moment it's almost calming. Almost. But then you remember where you are, and what you're doing, and the calm slips away. There's a subtle shift in the atmosphere, one you can't quite explain. Maybe it's the way the birds have gone quiet. Maybe it's just your imagination, fueled by exhaustion and tension. Either way, your senses sharpen, every detail suddenly more pronounced. You listen, you watch, you move. Because that's what you've been shaped into, a creature of motion. Not quite a soldier, not quite a civilian. Something in between. Something that exists only because war demands it. Another historical fact slips quietly into your awareness. In some medieval campaigns, entire battles were lost simply because a messenger arrived too late. Not killed, not intercepted, just delayed. A wrong turn, a brief hesitation, a moment of doubt, and suddenly reinforcements never come. Orders never reach their destination, strategies fall apart. It's a heavy thought, one you try not to dwell on, but it lingers anyway. Because now it's not just your life on the line, it's everyone else's too. You pick up your pace slightly, your steps more deliberate. The ground here is firmer, easier to navigate, and for a brief moment you feel almost capable. Like maybe you can do this. Maybe you can reach the end of this journey and hand over the message. Watch as someone else takes on the burden. Maybe you'll even survive long enough to forget what this feels like. But then, almost as quickly as the thought appears, it fades. Because deep down you know better. This isn't a one-time task. This is your role now. Your place in the machine. A quiet, dangerous, easily replaceable piece. Historians still argue whether messengers were ever truly valued by the societies they served. Some accounts suggest they were rewarded generously when successful. Others imply they were barely acknowledged at all, seen as tools rather than individuals. As you walk, feeling the steady rhythm of your steps and the constant presence of the message against your chest, you begin to understand why that debate exists. Because from where you stand, it doesn't feel like you matter. It feels like the message does. And you just happen to be the thing carrying it. The road curves again, dipping slightly as it leads toward another stretch of uneven terrain. You adjust your footing, careful not to slip, your attention divided between the ground beneath you and the world ahead. Every sense is working, every instinct is alert, because whether you like it or not, you're no longer just travelling through this war. You're part of the reason it keeps moving. The longer you walk, the more you begin to understand something unsettling. The message you carry isn't just important. It might be everything. You don't know the exact words pressed into that folded parchment, sealed tight with wax and authority, but you can feel its urgency in the way it was handed to you. No hesitation, no explanation, just a command. Deliver this, and do not fail. It's strange, really. A thin sheet of parchment, light enough to tear, small enough to hide beneath your clothes, and yet it holds the kind of power that can move entire armies. One sentence could mean advance, another could mean retreat. A single change in wording could turn a cautious defense into a reckless charge, and all of it depends on you. You shift slightly as you walk, adjusting the way the message rests against your chest. It's not heavy, not physically, but the longer you carry it, the more it feels like it is, like it's pressing inward, reminding you with every step that you're responsible for something far bigger than yourself. There's a well-established historical reality here. In medieval warfare, communication was painfully slow and dangerously fragile. Unlike today, there are no instant signals, no reliable long-distance systems. Everything depends on human movement, on people like you physically transporting information across uncertain terrain. And that makes every message precious, almost irreplaceable. Historians still argue whether commanders truly grasped just how vulnerable their communication lines were, or if they simply had no better alternative. Some believe elaborate systems were attempted, chains of riders, signal fires, coded flags, but none of them could fully replace the need for a single person to carry detailed instructions from one place to another. Right now, that person is you. The road stretches on and the land around you begins to change again. The open fields give way to patches of farmland, abandoned by the look of them. Crops left half-harvested, tools scattered where they were dropped. There's no sign of the life, no movement except the wind brushing through what remains. You don't need anyone to tell you what happened here. War passed through, and when war passes through, it takes things with it. Food, shelter, people. You swallow quietly, your throat dry despite the cool air. This is the kind of place you don't want to linger in. Too quiet, too exposed, too full of reminders that you're walking through a world that's already been broken. Still, you keep moving, because stopping doesn't change anything. A faint creaking sound reaches your ears, and you glance to the side. An old wooden cart sits tilted near the edge of a field, one wheel partially sunk into the earth. It looks like it's been there for days, maybe longer, forgotten or abandoned in a hurry. There's a strange thought that creeps into your mind then, one you try to ignore but can't quite shake. What if the person who left that cart was someone like you? Another messenger, another journey that didn't end the way it was supposed to. You push the thought aside, focusing instead on the rhythm of your steps. Step, step, step. It helps, in a way. Keeps your mind from wandering too far into places it doesn't need to go. But the questions linger. What are you actually carrying? Orders? Warnings? News of victory? Or defeat? There's a curious, almost unsettling tidbit from history. Some messengers were never told the contents of their messages, but others couldn't resist finding out. In certain cases, couriers would carefully break the wax seal, read the message, and reseal it, hoping no one would notice. Sometimes they got away with it, sometimes they didn't, and the consequences when they were caught were rarely forgiving. You glance down slightly, as if you could somehow see through the fabric and into the parchment itself. For a brief moment the temptation flickers again. Just a peek, just enough to understand what you're risking your life for. But you don't. You can't. Because knowing might not make things easier, it might make them worse. The wind picks up a little, rustling through the dry remains of crops and tugging gently at your cloak. It carries with it a faint sound, distant, uneven. You stop, listening carefully. Hoofbeats. Faint, but unmistakable. Your heart rate quickens, just slightly. You turn your head, scanning the horizon, trying to pinpoint the direction. It's hard to tell. The sound comes and goes, distorted by distance and terrain. Could be far off, could be closer than you think. Either way, it's not something you want to encounter directly. You step off the main path, moving carefully along the edge of the field, keeping low. The ground is softer here, your footsteps quieter. You angle yourself toward a small cluster of trees, just enough cover to break your silhouette. This is something else you've learned. You don't always run. Sometimes you disappear. Historians still argue whether messengers were trained in basic evasion techniques or if these instincts developed naturally over time. But it doesn't really matter how the knowledge came to be. What matters is that you use it, and right now it tells you to stay hidden. The hoofbeats grow slightly louder, then fade again. Whoever it is, they're not heading directly toward you. Maybe they're following another road. Maybe they're chasing something, or someone else. You wait a little longer than necessary just to be sure. Your breathing slows, steadying. Your grip on the edge of your cloak loosens, and slowly, cautiously, you step back onto the path. It's quieter now. Too quiet, maybe. But you can't afford to stay frozen in place, because every moment you delay, the message grows older, less timely, less useful. There's another historical reality that settles into your thoughts. Information in medieval warfare had a kind of expiration date. Orders that were correct in the morning might be useless by evening. A battlefield changes quickly, positions shift, opportunities vanish. Which means even if you survive, even if you avoid every danger and reach your destination, you could still fail, simply by being too late. It's a harsh truth, one that presses against you just as firmly as the message itself. You pick up your pace again, not quite running, but faster than before. There's a new urgency in your steps now, a quiet determination that wasn't there at the beginning. Because now you understand something you didn't fully grasp before. This isn't just about getting there, it's about getting there in time. The sky above shifts slightly, clouds moving in slow, heavy patterns. The light dims just enough to make the world feel a little more uncertain, a little less defined. You keep your eyes forward, keep your body moving, keep the message close, because whether you like it or not, you're carrying something more valuable than gold, and somewhere ahead, someone is waiting for it. Your first real journey doesn't feel heroic. It feels uncertain. There's no cheering behind you, no dramatic send-off, just a quiet departure, the kind that barely registers in anyone else's day. One moment you're standing among people, the next you're alone on the road, the weight of the message settling into your chest like something permanent. And the further you go, the more the world seems to change. The path narrows, twisting gently as it pulls you away from anything familiar. Fields fade behind you, replaced by uneven terrain where the ground rises and dips without warning. The air feels cooler here, heavier somehow, like it carries secrets you're not meant to understand. You keep moving anyway, because stopping doesn't make it safer, it just makes it easier to be found. There's a historical truth that settles quietly into your awareness as you walk. Medieval roads were rarely roads, in the way you might imagine. Many were little more than dirt tracks, shaped by repeated use rather than careful planning. In bad weather they turned into thick mud. In dry seasons they cracked and hardened into uneven ground that could twist an ankle without warning. Right now you're somewhere in between. The earth beneath your feet is firm but unpredictable. Each step requires attention. Each movement is deliberate. You can't afford to stumble. Not here. Not when every second matters. Historians still argue whether messengers preferred established routes or risked cutting through less travelled paths to save time. Established roads offered direction, yes, but also exposure. Anyone could be waiting along them. Less travelled paths might be faster, or they might lead you straight into trouble. There's no perfect choice, only the one you make. You adjust your course slightly, following the natural curve of the land rather than the clearer, more obvious trail. It feels safer somehow, less predictable, though you're not entirely sure if that's wisdom or just instinct trying to comfort you. The trees begin to thicken as you move forward. Not a dense forest, not yet, but enough to change the feeling of the space around you. Shadows stretch longer here, shifting with the movement of the clouds above. The light filters through branches in broken patterns, making it harder to see clearly at a distance. It's quieter too, not silent, but subdued. Like the world is holding its breath. You find yourself listening more closely now. Every sound matters. The soft crunch of your own footsteps, the occasional rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird that echoes longer than it should, and underneath it all, that constant quiet tension. Because you know, even if you don't see it yet, you're not the only one who uses these paths. A small stream cuts across your route, It's water shallow but moving quickly enough to make crossing tricky. You pause at the edge, studying it. The stones beneath the surface are uneven, slick with moisture. One wrong step, and you fall. Not fatal, maybe, but enough to slow you down, enough to ruin your pace. And pace is everything. You take a careful breath and step forward, placing your foot on the first stone. It shifts slightly, but holds. Then the next, and the next. Each movement slow, controlled, deliberate. For a moment, your entire world shrinks to this simple task. Balance. Step. Balance. Step. It's almost calming, until you reach the middle and realize how exposed you are. Out in the open. No cover. No way to move quickly if something, or someone, appears. You don't rush. Rushing leads to mistakes. Instead, you focus. Finish the crossing. Step onto solid ground again. Only then do you let yourself exhale. A small victory. But you take it anyway. There's a curious detail from history. Some messengers were instructed to carry multiple copies of the same message, hidden in different places on their body. If one was discovered or lost, another might survive. Others memorized the message entirely, so even if the parchment was taken, the information could still be delivered. You wonder, briefly, why you weren't given that option. Then again, maybe you were never meant to have a backup. Maybe the risk is part of the design. You move on, the ground rising slightly again as the trees begin to thin. The forest doesn't last long, just enough to remind you how quickly the environment can shift. Soon you're back in open terrain, though it feels different now, less familiar, more exposed. The sky above has changed too. Clouds gather in slow, heavy formations, dimming the light and casting everything in a muted grey. It's not quite threatening, not yet, but it adds to the sense that things are shifting, that something is coming. Historians still argue whether weather played a decisive role in the success or failure of messenger routes. Rain could slow travel to a crawl, turning roads into impassable mud. Fog could hide movement, but also conceal danger. Even strong winds could carry or distort sounds, making it harder to judge distance and direction. Right now, the air feels like it's on the edge of something. You pull your cloak tighter again, not because you're cold, but because it gives you a small sense of control, a barrier between you and everything else, even if it's mostly symbolic. The road ahead dips gently into a shallow valley, flanked by low hills on either side. It looks harmless enough at first glance, easy terrain, straightforward, but something about it makes you hesitate. Maybe it's the way the path narrows as it descends, maybe it's the lack of movement, or maybe it's just the quiet voice in your head reminding you that obvious paths are often the most dangerous. You slow slightly, scanning the area. Nothing moves, nothing obvious, at least. But you've already learned that nothing obvious doesn't mean nothing there. There's a well-known historical fact that certain armies would deliberately target narrow paths and valleys for ambushes. These choke points made it easier to control movement, to trap travellers, to strike when escape was limited. And right now, you're standing at the edge of one. A choice presents itself. Go through and risk whatever might be waiting, or try to go around, losing precious time. Neither option feels good. Neither option feels safe. But standing still? That's the worst choice of all. So you take a slow breath, steady yourself, and begin the descent. Each step measured, each sense alert, because this is what your first real journey has become. Not a simple task, not a straightforward path, but a constant series of decisions, where every choice carries its own risk, and somewhere ahead, whether you can see it or not, the consequences are already waiting. You don't see them, not at first. That's what makes it worse. The valley narrows just enough that your path feels guided, almost forced, between the low-rising hills on either side. The ground is packed firm here, easier to walk on, and for a brief, dangerous moment you feel a sense of relief. As if maybe, just maybe, this part will be easier. That feeling doesn't last long, because slowly, almost imperceptibly, something shifts. It's not a sound. Not exactly. More like the absence of sound. The wind that had been brushing gently across the land seems to die down. The faint rustling of grass fades. Even the distant calls of birds disappear, and in their place, stillness. You keep walking, but your steps grow quieter, more cautious. Your senses stretch outward, searching for something, anything, that explains the sudden change. This is the part no one prepares you for. Not the running, not the exhaustion, but the waiting tension of not knowing when something will happen. A well-known historical fact begins to echo in your thoughts. During medieval wars, messengers weren't just unlucky victims of violence, they were targets. Enemy scouts, light cavalry, even local informants were often instructed to intercept couriers whenever possible. Capturing or killing a messenger could delay orders, disrupt coordination, and sometimes even change the outcome of an entire campaign, which means if someone is out here, they're not here by accident, they're here for you. You swallow quietly, adjusting your pace just enough to seem natural. Not too fast, not too slow. Panic is visible even from a distance, and visibility is the last thing you want. Your hand drifts slightly closer to your chest again, feeling the presence of the message. Still there, still intact, still worth more than your life. Historians still argue whether messengers were given any form of self-defense training. Some accounts suggest they carried small weapons, daggers, short blades, more for emergencies than actual combat. Others believe most were expected to avoid confrontation entirely, relying on speed and stealth rather than strength. You fall into that second category. You're not here to fight, you're here to survive. A faint crunch reaches your ears. Behind you, you don't turn immediately. Turning too quickly gives away awareness. Instead, you let a few steps pass. Then, slowly, casually, you glance back. Nothing. Just the path stretching behind you, empty and still. But the feeling doesn't go away. In fact, it sharpens. There's something deeply unsettling about being hunted that you can't quite explain until you experience it. It's not loud. It's not obvious. It's a quiet pressure, a subtle awareness that something is wrong, that something is off, and right now, it's everywhere. A strange little historical tidbit surfaces in your mind. Some armies employed local villagers or mercenaries specifically to watch roads and report movement. Not soldiers in armour, not obvious threats. Just ordinary people who knew the land and could blend into it, which means the danger you're feeling might not look like danger at all. You keep moving. Because stopping confirms fear, and fear invites attention. The valley tightens slightly as you move deeper, the hills drawing closer, the path more confined. There's less room to manoeuvre now, fewer options. Exactly the kind of place someone would choose. You notice small details you might have missed before, a broken branch near the side of the path. Footprints, faint but there, pressed into the dirt at an angle that doesn't quite match your direction. Someone was here. Recently. Your pulse quickens, but you force your breathing to stay steady. In, out, in, out. Control what you can, ignore what you can't. Another sound, this time to your left. Softer, almost like fabric brushing against stone. You don't look, not directly. Instead you shift slightly, adjusting your path just enough to create space between you and the hillside. If something moves, you'll have a fraction more time to react. It's not much, but it's something. Historians still argue whether messengers were more often killed outright or captured for interrogation. Both happened, of course, but the intention mattered. Killing you stops the message. Capturing you might reveal it. And that thought alone is enough to send a chill through you. Because suddenly, death doesn't feel like the worst outcome. The air feels heavier now, harder to breathe. Not because anything has changed physically, but because your body knows what your mind is still trying to process. You're not alone, and whoever is out there, they're waiting. The path bends slightly ahead, curving just enough to break your line of sight. You approach it carefully, every step measured, every sense focused. This is the moment. You can feel it. That quiet tipping point where uncertainty becomes something else, something real. Your foot touches the edge of the curve, and for a split second, everything holds. Then, movement. Fast. Sudden. From the side. You don't think. You react. Your body twists instinctively, stepping back, your heart slamming against your ribs. A figure emerges from the edge of the path. Not fully visible, not fully clear, but enough to confirm what you already knew. You've been found. There's no dramatic clash, no drawn-out confrontation. Just a moment. A single, sharp realization. And then you move. You run. Not with perfect form, not with practiced grace. Just raw instinct driving you forward. Your feet pound against the ground, faster than before, faster than you thought you could manage after hours of travel. Behind you, there's a shout. Low. Urgent. More movement. You don't look back this time. Looking back slows you down, and slowing down gets you caught. The path ahead blurs slightly as you focus only on what matters. Distance, space, escape. Branches scrape against your cloak as you veer slightly off the main trail, choosing unpredictability over speed. It's risky, uneven ground, hidden obstacles. But predictable movement is easier to follow. And right now, you can't afford to be predictable. Your lungs burn, your legs protest. But you push harder, forcing your body to keep going, to ignore the signals telling you to stop. Because you understand something now with absolute clarity. They're not chasing you. They're chasing what you carry. And if they catch you, that message never arrives. Another historical reality slips into your awareness as you run. In some cases, messengers would destroy their own messages rather than let them fall into enemy hands, tearing them apart, swallowing pieces, anything to prevent interception. You don't know if you could do that. You don't know if you'd have the time. All you know is that right now, you have one job: keep moving. The ground slopes upward suddenly, forcing you to slow slightly as you climb. Your breath comes harder now, your body reaching its limits. But behind you, the sounds are fading. Footsteps, less distinct. Shouts, more distant. You don't stop. Not yet. Not until you're sure. Because survival, you're starting to realize, isn't about winning. It's about staying one step ahead. And right now, that's all you have. You don't stop running immediately. Even when the sounds behind you fade into nothing, even when your lungs burn and your legs begin to tremble, you keep moving, just in case. Because in your world, certainty is a luxury, and hesitation is dangerous. Only when the ground levels out and the silence holds, long enough to feel real, do you finally slow, then walk, then carefully, you stop. Your breathing is uneven, your chest rising and falling as you try to regain control. The air feels cooler now, brushing against your face, carrying with it the faint scent of damp earth and distant greenery. You listen. Nothing. No footsteps, no voices, no movement that doesn't belong to the natural world. For now, you're safe. Or at least, safe enough. You rest your hands briefly on your knees, leaning forward just slightly, letting your body recover. The exhaustion hits you all at once, like a delayed wave, heavy, unavoidable. But even now, even in this moment of stillness, your mind doesn't fully relax. Because the danger didn't disappear. It just passed, and it could return just as quickly. Slowly you straighten again, your hand instinctively moving to your chest, the message still there, still intact. You exhale, a quiet breath of relief slipping out before you can stop it. Whatever happened back there, whoever it was, they didn't get what they were after. Which means you're still in this. There's a historical truth that lingers quietly in your thoughts. Because messages were so valuable, entire systems were developed to protect them. Not just physically, but intellectually. Seals, codes, layered meanings, all designed to ensure that even if a message was intercepted, it wouldn't be easily understood. You glance down slightly, as if the parchment might somehow reveal its secrets through the fabric. But of course, it doesn't. It remains silent, unopened, unquestioned, at least for now. Historians still argue how sophisticated medieval encryption really was. Some claim it was surprisingly advanced. Simple substitution ciphers, coded phrasing, even prearranged signals hidden within ordinary language. Others believe most messages relied more on secrecy than complexity, assuming that preventing interception was easier than preventing understanding. Either way, the message you carry is more than just words. It's protected, layered, designed to survive. Even if you don't. You shift slightly, adjusting your cloak and the position of the parchment beneath it. The run has loosened things, made them less secure. That won't do. You take a moment, just a moment, to check everything. The seal, unbroken. The fold, intact. The placement, hidden, good. Still, a thought creeps in. If someone had caught you back there, would they have understood it? Or would they have needed you alive to explain? That question sits heavier than you expect, because suddenly survival isn't just about keeping the message safe, it's about keeping yourself from becoming part of it. A curious little detail from history: some messengers were instructed to carry false messages alongside the real ones, decoys. If captured, they could hand over something believable, buying time or misleading the enemy. You weren't given one, which either means your message is too important for deception, or that no one expected you to survive long enough to need it. You're not sure which answer you prefer. The wind picks up slightly again, rustling through nearby trees. It's a welcome sound now, breaking the unnatural silence that had settled over everything. The world feels alive again. But you don't let your guard down. Not completely. Instead, you step off the open ground and move toward the edge of a small wooded area. Not deep enough to lose your way, but enough to give you cover while you gather yourself. You crouch briefly near a tree, your back resting lightly against the rough bark. It's not comfort, not really, but it's something close. A pause, a moment. You allow your eyes to close, just for a second. And in that second, your mind drifts. Not far, not into dreams or distractions, just enough to process. You see the movement again, the sudden figure, the realization that you are being watched, tracked, hunted. It replays in your thoughts, sharper now, more defined. You weren't just unlucky, you were expected. That's the part that unsettles you most, because it means someone, somewhere, knew the route, knew the timing, knew you would pass through. Historians still argue whether information leaks were common in medieval warfare. Some believe spies and informants played a larger role than traditionally acknowledged. Others argue that coincidence and predictable patterns were enough to explain most interceptions. But sitting here now, it doesn't feel like coincidence. It feels like someone was waiting. You open your eyes again, the brief rest already feeling like too much. You can't stay here long. Every moment you pause is a moment the world moves on without you. And the message, it doesn't wait. You push yourself back to your feet, brushing off your cloak, resetting your posture. Your body protests, a dull ache settling into your muscles, but it's manageable. It has to be, because you're not done yet, not even close. Before stepping back onto the path, you take one last look around. Careful, deliberate, checking for anything out of place. Nothing obvious. But you've learned by now, nothing obvious doesn't mean safe, it just means unseen. There's another historical reality that settles into your thoughts as you prepare to move again. Messengers weren't just carriers of information, they were often part of a larger invisible network. Routes, timings, expectations, all interconnected. If one piece failed, others had to adjust, which means if someone tried to intercept you, there might be others watching other paths, other routes, other messengers. You're part of something bigger, even if you never see it. You step forward again, back onto the uneven ground, your pace slower now but steady. Controlled, intentional. Because rushing blindly won't help you. You need to be faster, yes, but also smarter, more aware, more careful. The trees thin out ahead, revealing another stretch of open land. The sky has shifted again, darker now, the clouds heavier, pressing low as if the world itself is leaning closer. You pull your cloak tighter once more. Not for warmth, but for readiness. Because whatever systems protect the message, seals, codes, hidden meanings, none of them matter if you don't make it. And after what just happened, you're starting to understand that surviving this journey might be the hardest part of all. You tell yourself it was just one encounter, just one moment of danger on a long road. But the thought doesn't sit right, because now that you've felt it, the tension, the sudden shift from silence to movement, you can't unfeel it. Every step forward carries that memory with it, a quiet reminder that the next threat might not give you time to run. And that's when the idea settles in. What happens if you don't escape next time? The question lingers as the path stretches ahead, pulling you onward. The land here is uneven again, broken by low ridges and scattered brush. Not quite open, not quite sheltered, just enough to make every direction feel uncertain. You move carefully, more carefully than before, because now it's not just about avoiding danger, it's about preparing for it. There's a historical truth that quietly emerges in your thoughts. When messengers were captured during medieval conflicts, they weren't always killed immediately. Sometimes they were taken, questioned, searched, and studied for whatever information they might carry. Not just the message, but the messenger. Historians still argue how much information could realistically be extracted this way. Some believe most couriers knew very little, making interrogation less useful than expected. Others suggest experienced messengers often carried verbal instructions alongside written ones, making them far more valuable alive than dead. You're not entirely sure which kind you are, and that uncertainty is unsettling. The wind brushes lightly across your face as you continue, carrying the faint scent of something distant. Smoke again, but softer this time. Not destruction, perhaps. Maybe a camp, maybe people, or maybe something else entirely. You don't follow it, not yet. Instead, you stay on your path, your focus narrowing to the immediate, the ground beneath your feet, the horizon ahead. The subtle shifts in sound that might mean something, or nothing at all. But your mind keeps returning to that question. Captured. It's a different kind of fear, less immediate than an ambush, less sudden than a blade in the dark, but somehow heavier, slower, lingering. Because if someone catches you, it doesn't end quickly. A curious, almost unsettling tidbit from history slips into your awareness. Some messengers were trained to destroy their messages at the first sign of capture. Not after, not during, immediately. Tear it apart, burn it if possible, swallow pieces if necessary. Anything to ensure the information didn't fall into the wrong hands. You glance down slightly, your hand brushing once more against your chest. The parchment feels the same as it always has. Thin, fragile, important. Could you destroy it, if it came to that? The thought doesn't sit comfortably, because destroying the message means failing the mission, but letting it be taken might be worse. Historians still argue which outcome was considered more unforgivable. You walk on, the rhythm of your steps steady, but your thoughts heavier now. The world around you seems quieter again, though not in the same way as before. This quiet feels watchful, as if something is waiting for you to make a mistake. The path dips slightly, leading toward a narrow stretch where the ground softens underfoot. Your boots sink just a little with each step, the earth damp from recent moisture. It slows you down, but not enough to matter, at least not yet. You adjust your pace, compensate, adapt, because that's what you do now. Not just move forward, but adjust to whatever the road throws at you. A shape appears ahead, small at first, barely noticeable. You narrow your eyes slightly, focusing. It resolves slowly into something more defined. A figure, standing still. Your body reacts before your mind fully processes it. Your steps slow, not stopping completely, but enough to give you time. Time to observe, time to think. The figure doesn't move, doesn't call out, just stands there, waiting. You feel that familiar tension rise again, tightening in your chest, sharpening your senses. This isn't random. It never is. There's a historical reality that settles quietly into place. Not all threats come rushing out of hiding. Sometimes they stand in plain sight, forcing you to make the first move, forcing you to reveal your intentions, forcing you to choose. Historians still argue how often deception was used in these situations. False travellers, disguised scouts, even captured messengers turned unwilling tools. The lines between ally and enemy were rarely clear, especially in contested territories, which means the figure ahead could be anything: a traveller, a scout, a trap. You slow further now, your mind racing through possibilities. Turn back? No. Too obvious. Too slow. Approach directly. Risky. Avoid entirely. Might take too long. Every option has a cost, and the longer you stand here weighing them, the more visible you become. A faint movement from the figure, just enough to confirm they've noticed you. Of course they have. You're standing in the open. The distance between you isn't far now. Close enough that you can make out vague details. Clothing, posture, but not enough to read intent. Your heart beats steadily, controlled, but louder than you'd like. This is it. A moment where the wrong choice could end everything. You shift slightly, angling your path just enough to suggest you're passing by rather than heading directly toward them. Not avoidance, not confrontation, something in between, neutral, harmless. At least that's the impression you're trying to give. You keep your pace steady, not rushing, not hesitating, just moving. As you draw closer, the figure turns slightly, their face still obscured by distance and shadow. There's no immediate aggression, no sudden movement, but there's no reassurance either. Just presence. And presence is enough. You pass within a distance that feels far too close. Every instinct screams at you to run, but you don't. Running confirms fear, and fear can provoke action. So you walk, steady, controlled, deliberate. Your eyes remain forward, though your awareness stretches outward, tracking every subtle movement, every shift in the air. For a moment, nothing happens. Then you're past them, a few steps, a few more, and still, nothing. You don't turn back, not immediately, only after the distance grows, only when the tension begins to ease, just slightly, do you risk a glance over your shoulder. The figure is still there, watching, but not following, not yet. You face forward again, your pace increasing just a fraction, because even though nothing happened, it doesn't feel like safety. It feels like a warning, a reminder that in this world, you're always one moment away from being caught, and if that moment comes, you'll have to decide very quickly what matters more, the message or yourself. Night doesn't fall all at once. It creeps in slowly, almost politely at first, as if giving you time to prepare. The light softens, shadows stretch longer, and the world begins to lose its sharp edges. Colours fade into muted tones, details blur just enough to make everything feel slightly uncertain. You notice it gradually, the way the sky dims from pale grey to something deeper, the way the land around you seems to quiet, settling into a different rhythm. Even the air feels cooler now, brushing against your skin with a subtle chill, and with it comes a choice: keep moving, or stop. There's a historical truth that presses quietly into your thoughts. Many medieval messengers preferred travelling at night despite the risks. Darkness offered cover, a way to avoid detection, especially in contested territories. But it also brought its own dangers: poor visibility, hidden obstacles, and the constant threat of getting lost. Historians still argue which was more dangerous, travelling by day, where you could be seen, or by night, where you might never see danger coming. Standing here, watching the last of the light slip away, you realise there's no clear answer, only trade-offs. You pull your cloak tighter around yourself, the fabric offering a small barrier against the cooling air. The path ahead is still visible, but just barely. Shapes are softer now, less defined. The hills blend into the sky, the ground into shadow. You could stop, find a place to rest, wait for morning. But waiting means losing time, and time is already slipping away, so you keep moving, carefully, deliberately. Each step slower than before, your senses stretching outward to compensate for what your eyes can no longer fully see. The world feels different in the dark, not empty, but hidden, as if everything is still there, just beyond your reach, watching, listening. A faint sound reaches your ears, the rustle of something small in the undergrowth. You freeze instinctively, your body going still as your mind races through possibilities. Animal, wind, something else. The sound fades as quickly as it came, leaving behind only silence. You exhale slowly, your breath visible now in the cooler air. This is what night does. It amplifies everything. Every sound feels louder, every shadow feels deeper, every thought feels heavier. A strange little historical tidbit surfaces in your mind. Some messengers would deliberately travel without any light at all, even when they had access to torches or lanterns. Light made you visible from a distance. A moving glow in the darkness was easy to track. Better to see less than to be seen at all. You follow that instinct now. No light, just darkness and memory. You rely on the faint outline of the path, the subtle difference between ground and not ground, the way your feet remember the rhythm of movement even when your eyes struggle to keep up. Step, pause, step. It's slower, yes, but quieter. Safer, maybe. Historians still argue how often messengers lost their way at night. Without clear markers, without consistent terrain, even experienced travellers could drift off course. A wrong turn in daylight might cost you time. At night, it could cost you everything. You try to stay focused. That crooked hill you passed earlier, the slight bend in the road, the direction of the wind. You piece it together as you go, building a fragile sense of direction in a world that no longer offers clear guidance. The darkness deepens. Now it's not just dim, it's full night. The sky above is a deep, endless expanse, broken only by faint stars that offer more comfort than clarity. They're beautiful, in a distant, quiet way, but they don't help you see the ground beneath your feet. Still, they remind you that the world is larger than this moment, that somewhere beyond this road, beyond this war, things continue. You hold on to that thought, because it's easy to feel small out here. Small, and very alone. The wind shifts again, carrying a new sound, distant, low, rhythmic. For a moment, your heart tightens. Hoofbeats? You listen carefully. The sound is faint, uneven, almost blending with the natural rhythm of the night. It could be real. It could be your imagination, shaped by everything you've already experienced. You don't wait to find out. Instead, you move off the path again, stepping into the darker edge of the landscape where shadows are thicker, where your outline disappears more easily. You crouch slightly, lowering your profile, your breathing controlled, quiet. If someone is out there, you don't want to be seen. Minutes pass, or maybe it's longer. Time feels different in the dark, stretched, uncertain. The sound fades, or maybe it was never there. Either way, you remain still a little longer just to be sure, because certainty is rare, and caution is survival. Another historical reality settles into your thoughts. In some regions, messengers would use the night not just to travel but to hide, finding temporary shelter in ruins, abandoned structures, or natural cover. Not full rest, but enough to regain strength without exposing themselves. You consider it. Just for a moment. The idea of stopping, of letting your body recover even slightly. It's tempting. Your legs ache. Your shoulders feel heavy. Your mind tired. But then you remember the message, the distance still ahead, the uncertainty of how much time you've already lost, and you know, you can't stop yet. Not here, not now. You rise slowly, easing back onto the path, your movements careful, deliberate. The darkness feels thicker now, more complete, but you've adjusted to it, just enough to keep going, just enough to survive it. Step by step you move forward again, each foot placed with intention, each breath measured, because in the night, everything slows down, everything quiets, but the danger, it doesn't disappear, it just becomes harder to see, and as you continue into the darkness, guided only by instinct and memory, one thought stays with you. Out here, in the silence of night, you're never truly alone. By the time the night begins to thin, your body is no longer asking for rest, it's demanding it. The darkness slowly loosens its grip on the land, giving way to a pale, uncertain grey. Shapes return first, blurred outlines of hills, trees, and broken ground, followed by colour, faint and washed out, like the world itself is still waking up. But you never really slept. Not properly. Not safely. And now, it shows. Your steps are heavier than before, each one carrying a dull weight that wasn't there at the beginning. Your legs move, but not with the same ease. Your shoulders ache. Your breath comes just a little shorter, a little tighter. This is the part no one talks about. Not the sudden danger, not the chase, but the slow, grinding exhaustion that builds with every mile. There's a well-known historical fact that medieval messengers often travelled extraordinary distances without proper rest, sometimes covering dozens of kilometres in a single stretch. In urgent situations, they pushed far beyond normal limits, driven not by endurance alone, but by necessity. You're starting to understand what that feels like. The road beneath you has changed again. It's rougher now, scattered with loose stones that shift underfoot if you're not careful. Each misstep sends a small jolt through your body, a reminder that your coordination isn't what it was hours ago. Fatigue does that. It doesn't just slow you down, it makes you less precise, more vulnerable. Historians still argue how messengers manage their energy over long journeys. Some believe they followed strict pacing strategies, conserving strength early to avoid collapse later. Others suggest many simply pushed until they couldn't anymore, relying on sheer determination to carry them through. Looking at yourself now, it feels like the second one. The wind is different this morning. Cooler, sharper, carrying with it a dryness that settles into your throat. You swallow, but it doesn't help much. Your lips feel dry, your mouth empty. Hunger creeps in quietly, not as a sharp pain, but as a steady, hollow presence. You haven't eaten in a while, maybe longer than you realise. A strange little historical tidbit surfaces. Some messengers carried small amounts of food with them, things that wouldn't spoil easily. Hard bread, dried meat, sometimes even onions, which were believed to help maintain strength during long journeys. You check your satchel. There's something there. Not much. A small piece of bread, hardened at the edges but still edible. You hesitate for a moment, because once you eat it, it's gone. But your body doesn't care about strategy right now, it cares about survival. So you break off a piece and chew slowly. The texture rough, the taste plain. It doesn't satisfy in the way you might hope, but it's enough to take the edge off. Enough to remind your body that it can keep going. For a little while longer. The path ahead slopes gently downward, leading toward a stretch of uneven ground dotted with low shrubs and patches of dry grass. It's not difficult terrain, but it demands attention, something that's becoming harder to maintain. Your mind drifts, not far, just enough to miss small details. A loose stone, a slight dip. Your foot catches, you stumble. It's not a dramatic fall, just a brief loss of balance, but it's enough. Enough to send a jolt of alarm through you, to snap your focus back into place. Because that's how it happens. Not with something big, but something small. A moment of distraction. A single mistake. Historians still argue how many messengers were lost not to enemies, but to the environment itself. Falls, exposure, exhaustion. These quiet, unremarkable dangers were just as deadly as any ambush. You steady yourself, taking a slow breath. Focus. Stay present. Because your body might be tired, but your survival still depends on awareness. The sun begins to rise properly now, its light pushing through the fading grey, casting long shadows across the land. It's not warm yet, but it brings clarity, visibility, a sense, however small, of control. You welcome it, even if it means being seen more easily, because right now, you need to see. Your pace steadies again, though slower than before, more measured, less driven by urgency, more by necessity. You're no longer trying to be fast, you're trying to be consistent, because consistency gets you further than bursts of speed. There's another historical reality that settles quietly into your thoughts. Some messenger routes were designed with stopping points, places where a courier could rest briefly, change horses, or pass the message to another runner. A relay system, efficient, safer. But you haven't seen anything like that. No outposts, no riders waiting. Just road after road after road, which means you're doing this alone. The wind shifts again, warmer now as the sun climbs higher. It carries with it the faint scent of something distant. Water, maybe, or vegetation. Life. You lift your head slightly, scanning the horizon, and there, far ahead, something changes. A faint line, darker than the surrounding land. A cluster of shapes. It could be trees. It could be a settlement. It could be nothing, but it's different. And right now, different is enough. You angle your path slightly toward it, your steps gaining a small, renewed sense of purpose. Not speed, your body won't allow that, but direction. Because direction matters, more than you realized at the start. Your hand drifts once more to your chest, feeling the message beneath your tunic. Still there, still intact, still waiting to be delivered. You've come this far, through exhaustion, through fear, through moments where stopping would have been easier, and yet, you're still moving. But the road isn't finished with you yet, because as the sun rises higher, revealing more of the world around you, it also reveals something else. The toll this journey is taking, on your body, on your mind, on your ability to keep going, and somewhere ahead, beyond that distant line on the horizon, you know the hardest part might still be waiting. By the time the sun settles into the sky, you start thinking about the others, not the ones chasing you, not the ones waiting for the message, but the ones who did this before you. Because it's impossible not to wonder how many walked roads like this, carrying something just as important, feeling the same weight pressing against their chest, the same uncertainty with every step. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. There's a quiet historical truth here. Some messengers became known, remembered not for who they were, but for what they carried and what they endured. Their names don't always survive, but their actions echo through the outcomes of battles, the rise and fall of kingdoms, and as you walk, tired but still moving, you begin to feel connected to them in a strange, distant way, like you're part of a line that stretches far behind you. One of the most well-known examples comes from ancient times, Pheidippides. The story goes that he ran from Marathon to Athens to deliver news of victory, collapsing shortly after delivering his message. Historians still argue whether the story is entirely accurate or shaped by legend over time, but the idea remains powerful. A messenger who completes the task, and pays for it with everything. You try not to dwell on that part, but it lingers, because out here it doesn't feel like a story. It feels possible. The road beneath you continues to stretch forward, but your mind drifts backward now, imagining others who walked similar paths. Messengers in different lands, different wars, all facing the same quiet dangers. A courier riding through the muddy roads of medieval France, a runner crossing the rugged hills of England, a scout weaving through forests in Eastern Europe, carrying orders that could shift entire campaigns. Different places, different times, same risk. Historians still argue how often these individuals were acknowledged for their efforts. Some accounts describe rewards, land, money, protection, for those who completed especially dangerous missions. Others suggest many simply returned, handed over the message, and faded back into anonymity. Tools, not heroes, useful, but forgettable. You wonder which one you'll be, if you even get the chance. A faint breeze moves across the land, carrying with it the warmth of the rising sun. It feels different now, less threatening than the cold of night, less heavy than the stillness of earlier. For a moment it almost feels normal, but that illusion doesn't last long, because normal doesn't exist here anymore. Your body reminds you of that with every step. The fatigue hasn't gone away, it's settled deeper, becoming part of you. Your legs move because they have to, not because they want to. Your shoulders feel tight, your breathing controlled but strained, and yet you keep going. Because stopping isn't an option you can afford. A curious historical tidbit surfaces in your thoughts. Some messengers became so skilled at their work that they were trusted with increasingly critical tasks, moving between commanders, carrying sensitive information across vast distances. Over time, they developed reputations, not as warriors, but as something just as valuable. Reliable. That word sticks with you. Reliable. Not fast, not strong, not brave in the traditional sense, just dependable. The kind of person who finishes the journey, even when it hurts, even when it's dangerous, even when no one is watching. You're not sure if you're there yet, but you're trying. The land begins to shift again as you walk, the terrain smoothing slightly, the scattered shrubs giving way to more consistent ground. It's easier to move here, your steps finding a steadier rhythm. It helps, a little, but your mind keeps circling back to the same thought. What happened to the ones who didn't make it? Historians still argue how many messengers were lost during major conflicts. Records are incomplete, often focused more on outcomes than the individuals involved, but the assumption is clear: not all of them arrived. Some were intercepted, some lost, some simply vanished, and no one wrote their names down. You pass a small rise in the land, and as you crest it, your view opens slightly. The distant shapes you noticed earlier are clearer now. A cluster of trees maybe, or something more structured. It's still too far to be certain, but it's something, and right now, something is enough. You adjust your path again, angling slightly toward it, your steps guided not just by instinct now, but by purpose. A destination, even an uncertain one, changes the way you move. It gives direction to your exhaustion, a reason to keep going. The wind carries another sound, faint, distant, but familiar. Voices. You freeze. Not out of fear this time, but out of caution. Voices mean people, and people are unpredictable. You lower yourself slightly, moving toward a patch of taller grass, using it for cover as you listen more closely. The sound is too far to make out words, but the tone is clear enough. Conversation, not shouting, not urgency, just talking. That could be good, or it could be very, very bad. There's another historical reality that settles into your thoughts. Not all encounters are hostile, but in times of war, trust becomes a rare and fragile thing. Even civilians might report you. Even allies might question you, because everyone has something to lose, and everyone is trying to survive. You stay still for a moment longer, weighing your options. Approach and risk being questioned. Avoid and lose time. It's always a choice, always a trade-off. But you've learned something by now. Standing still too long is its own kind of danger. So you rise slowly, carefully, and begin to move again, this time with even more awareness, even more control. Because whether those voices belong to friend or foe, you can't afford to assume either, and as you step forward, carrying not just your message but the invisible weight of everyone who's done this before you, you realize something quiet, but certain. This journey, it's never just yours. You don't move, not forward, not back. For a few seconds, you simply exist in that narrow stretch of land, the faint metallic sounds ahead settling into something unmistakable now. Armor shifting, equipment brushing against itself, the quiet, controlled presence of people who are used to carrying weight. Soldiers. Not many, but enough. Your breathing slows, instinct taking over where thought begins to falter. This isn't like the distant voices you left behind. This is closer, more immediate. The kind of situation where one wrong step doesn't lead to uncertainty. It leads to confrontation. And confrontation is not something you can afford. Your eyes move across the terrain, searching. The path ahead curves gently to the right, disappearing behind a low rise. The sound is coming from just beyond it. You can't see them yet, but they're there. Close enough to hear, close enough to notice you, if you're careless. There's a historical reality that slips quietly into your mind. Messengers rarely travelled with protection. Speed and discretion mattered more than strength. If they encountered armed groups, their best option was almost always avoidance. Not fighting, not negotiating, avoiding. You shift your weight slightly, testing the ground beneath your feet. Loose dirt, small stones, nothing stable enough for quick, silent movement. That complicates things. To your left, the land rises slightly. Nothing steep, but enough to offer partial cover if you move carefully. To your right, the ground dips, forming a shallow, uneven stretch dotted with scrub and low vegetation. Neither option is perfect. Both carry risk. But standing still, that's the worst choice of all. You decide quickly. Left. Higher ground means better visibility. A chance to see before being seen. You move slowly, each step placed with care, avoiding the worst of the loose stones. Your body stays low, your posture controlled, every movement deliberate. The sounds ahead grow clearer as you shift position. Voices now, low, casual, not alarmed. They're not expecting trouble. That's good, very good. You reach the slight rise and lower yourself just enough to peer over it. And there they are, 3 figures. Armoured, but not heavily. Their gear looks practical, worn from use rather than polished for display. They stand near the bend in the path, one leaning slightly on a spear, another adjusting something at his belt, the third scanning the distance lazily. Not a formal checkpoint, not a defensive position, more like a patrol or a temporary pause. That changes the calculation again. Patrols move, eventually, but you don't know when. And waiting here, exposed on higher ground, isn't safe either. Your mind works through options faster now. You could wait for them to leave, safe, if they move soon. You could try to slip past them quietly using the terrain for cover, risky, but faster. Or you could turn back and find another route entirely, safer in theory, but costly in time and energy. And time is not something you have much of. There's an interesting historical detail that comes to mind. Some messengers used distractions to create openings, small controlled disturbances that drew attention away from their path. A thrown stone, a sudden noise, something just enough to shift focus. You glance down, spotting a small rock near your hand. It's tempting, very tempting. But distractions can go wrong, easily, especially when you don't know how disciplined or nervous the people ahead are. You pick it up anyway, not to throw, just to feel the option. Because having a choice matters. The wind shifts again, brushing lightly against your face, carrying your scent away from the path below. It's subtle, but you notice it. Another small advantage. You look back toward the soldiers, still relaxed, still unaware. This is your moment. Not perfect, but possible. You lower yourself again, moving along the ridge rather than directly toward them, keeping the rise between you and their line of sight. It's slower this way, your progress measured in careful, deliberate steps rather than distance, but it keeps you hidden. And hidden is survival. The ground here is uneven, forcing you to adjust constantly. Your legs protest quietly, fatigue still present, still real. But your focus is sharper now, overriding the exhaustion with something stronger. Need. You reach a point where the ridge dips slightly, giving you a narrow angle past the bend in the path. From here, you can see just enough to know, if you move now, you might pass behind them, closer than you'd like, but without being seen. Your grip tightens slightly, the small rock still in your hand, just in case. You take a slow breath, then another, and then you move, careful, controlled. Each step placed with precision, your body staying low, your eyes fixed on the space ahead rather than the danger behind. You don't rush, you don't hesitate, you just go. The sounds of the soldiers shift slightly as you move, one of them adjusting position, another speaking a few quiet words you can't quite make out. For a moment, your heart spikes, your body tensing instinctively. But they don't turn, they don't react, they don't notice. You keep moving, past the bend, past the sound, past the point where turning back would even be possible, and then it's quiet again. Not the heavy, uncertain silence from before, but something lighter, safer. You slow your pace, just slightly, allowing yourself a brief moment to breathe properly again. You made it. Not through strength, not through speed, but through awareness, through choice, through understanding the situation and acting accordingly. There's another quiet historical truth in that. Many successful messengers weren't the fastest or the strongest. They were the ones who adapted, who read the moment correctly, who knew when to move, and when not to. You glance back once, just briefly. The path behind you is empty now, the soldiers hidden again by the curve and the rise. Gone, as if they were never there. But you know better. Because this journey isn't just about distance. It's about moments like that. Moments where everything could have ended, but didn't. You turn forward again, your hand brushing lightly against the message beneath your tunic. Still there, still safe, still waiting. And now, you're one step closer to delivering it. But the road ahead remains uncertain, because if there's one thing this journey has taught you so far, it's that survival doesn't come from avoiding danger completely. It comes from passing through it, again and again, until there's nothing left between you and the end. You don't stop immediately, even after the danger has passed, even after the sounds have faded completely, because something has changed in you now. Earlier, you would have taken that moment, the escape, the silence, as permission to rest, to slow down, to let your guard fall, even if only slightly. But now, you don't trust silence the same way. You keep moving, steady, measured. Your body still feels the strain, the fatigue pressing deep into your muscles, but your awareness remains sharp, almost instinctive now. Every step, every breath, every shift in the air around you, it all registers, because you've learned something important. Danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits. There's a quiet tension in the land as you move forward, something subtle but persistent. The path widens again, opening into a stretch of uneven ground where the terrain feels less controlled, less predictable. It should feel safer, more space, more visibility, but it doesn't. Because open ground works both ways. You can see further, but so can anyone else. Your hand drifts, almost unconsciously to your chest again, fingers pressing lightly against the hidden message beneath your tunic. Still there. Still everything. A thought begins to form, not sudden, but slow, creeping in from the edges of your mind. Trust. Not the kind you give freely, the kind you question. Because this journey hasn't just been about movement, it's been about decisions, who to avoid, what to risk, when to act. And somewhere in all of that, there's always been an unspoken question. Who can you trust? There's a historical reality tied closely to that question. Messengers, especially those carrying sensitive information, were sometimes as much a liability as they were an asset. If captured, they could reveal information. If bribed, they could alter it. And sometimes they chose to. Not all betrayals were dramatic. Not all involved grand schemes or obvious intent. Sometimes it was simple. A message delivered late. A route slightly altered. A detail forgotten. Small changes. Huge consequences. Your steps slow. Not from exhaustion this time, but from thought. Because you realise something uncomfortable. From the outside, there's no way for anyone to know if you'll do your job correctly. No way to see what you've seen. No way to measure the decisions you've made along the way. They trust you, because they have to, and that trust is fragile. You glance ahead, scanning the terrain again. The distant shapes you noticed earlier are clearer now, definitely trees clustered together, their dark forms standing out against the lighter ground. Possibly water nearby, possibly shelter, possibly people. Every possibility carries its own risk. There's another detail historians often discuss. Some messengers were given ways to prove their loyalty. Seals, tokens, marks that confirmed not just the authenticity of the message, but the integrity of the one carrying it. Because words alone weren't always enough. You think about the message you carry, sealed, hidden, untouched, that matters, not just for the information inside, but for what it says about you. Because if that seal is broken, even for a moment, everything changes. Your role, your trust, your purpose. You move closer to the trees now, your pace steady but cautious. The ground softens slightly beneath your feet, the dry, rough terrain giving way to something more stable, more forgiving. It feels different here. Quieter. Not empty, just still. The kind of stillness that makes you listen more carefully. Your eyes adjust to the shifting light as you approach the edge of the trees, the shadows deeper here, the air cooler. It's a welcome change after the exposed ground, but it also limits your visibility, less space, more cover, for you, and for anything else that might be nearby. You pause briefly at the edge, not stepping fully inside yet, because this is another choice. Enter and gain shelter, but lose visibility. Stay outside and remain exposed, but aware. Neither is perfect. Both require trust, not in others, in yourself. There's a quiet truth that settles into your thoughts. Many messengers didn't fail because they were intercepted or overwhelmed. They failed because they made the wrong call at the wrong time, not out of weakness, but because the situation didn't offer a clear answer, just like now. You take a slow breath, feeling the weight of the decision, the fatigue in your body, the steady presence of the message against your chest, and then you step forward, into the trees. The light shifts immediately, dimming as the canopy filters the sun above. Shadows stretch longer here, blending together, softening the edges of everything around you. Your steps instinctively become quieter, slower, more deliberate, because this environment demands it. The sounds change too. No longer the open wind and distant movement, but the subtle rustling of leaves, the faint creak of branches, the quiet, almost constant presence of life hidden just out of sight. It's calmer, but not safer. Your senses adjust, picking up smaller details now, things that would have been lost in the open. A broken twig, a patch of disturbed earth, the faint suggestion of movement somewhere deeper within the trees. You're not alone here. You never were. But here, it feels closer, more immediate. Your hand tightens slightly against your chest again, grounding yourself in the one thing that hasn't changed. The message, your purpose, your reason for being here. Because trust isn't just about others, it's about yourself. Trusting that you'll keep going, that you won't break the seal, that you won't take the easier path if it risks the mission, that you won't become one of the stories historians argue about later, the messenger who almost made it, the one who failed, quietly, forgotten. You move deeper into the trees, your path no longer defined by roads or tracks, but by instinct and awareness. Each step carries you further from where you started, closer to where you need to be, and further into a journey where the greatest risk isn't always the enemy. Sometimes, it's the choices you make along the way. The trees close in behind you, not all at once, but gradually, until the world you came from feels distant, almost unreal. The open land, the path, the sky stretching endlessly above, it all fades into memory, replaced by something tighter, quieter, more uncertain. Here, everything feels closer. The air is cooler beneath the canopy, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and leaves. It settles into your lungs differently, heavier somehow, as if the forest itself is pressing in around you. Your steps slow without you thinking about it. They have to. The ground is uneven, scattered with roots and soft patches that shift under your weight. Every movement requires attention. Every step demands care. Because here, a mistake doesn't echo. It disappears. There's a subtle but important historical truth tied to environments like this. Messengers didn't just face enemies on open roads, forests, valleys, narrow passes. These places created their own kind of danger. Limited visibility, unpredictable terrain, and most of all, no clear way out. You move forward, your eyes scanning constantly, adjusting to the dim light filtering through the branches above. Shapes blend together here, shadows overlapping in ways that make distance harder to judge. It's disorienting, even for someone who's been alert this long. Your hand brushes against your chest again, feeling the message beneath your tunic, still there, still intact, still the reason you keep going. But now, there's something else, a weight that wasn't there before, not physical, mental, because you know, deep down, that this part of the journey might be the most difficult. Not because of what you can see, but because of what you can't. A faint sound reaches you, not metallic, not voices, something softer, a shift, a movement through leaves. You stop, every muscle tightening instinctively, your breathing slowing to the bare minimum as you listen. It comes again, closer this time, a rustle, low to the ground. Your mind moves quickly, working through possibilities. Animal, small, maybe, but you don't assume, you can't afford to. There's another historical reality. Forests weren't just obstacles, they were hiding places, for scouts, for deserters, for people who didn't want to be found, and sometimes for people waiting. You crouch slightly, lowering your centre of gravity, making yourself a smaller presence among the trees. Your eyes search for movement, for anything that doesn't belong. Seconds pass, long ones. Then, you see it. A figure, not standing, moving low, careful, just like you. Your breath catches, but you don't react. Not yet, because reacting too quickly is how situations spiral out of control. The figure shifts again, stepping into a sliver of filtered light. Not armoured, not like the soldiers you passed earlier. Lighter, quieter. Someone else moving through this forest with the same intention you have. To avoid being seen, that makes them unpredictable. Your mind sharpens further, weighing possibilities. Another messenger, a scout, a deserter, or someone with entirely different intentions? There's no clear answer. And that's the problem, because uncertainty is the most dangerous condition of all. You stay still, watching, waiting. The figure pauses as well, not looking directly at you, but not moving either. It's subtle, but it's enough. They know something is here. Maybe not exactly where you are, but close, very close. There's a quiet tension that settles between you, invisible but unmistakable. Two people, both aware enough to sense the other, neither willing to make the first move. This is where choices matter most. There's a historical detail that surfaces now. When messengers encountered unknown individuals, outcomes varied wildly. Some exchanged information, some avoided each other completely, and some made the wrong call. You could reveal yourself, risky, but potentially safer than being discovered. You could retreat, slowly, carefully, avoid the situation entirely, or you could stay exactly where you are and wait. Each option carries its own danger. Each one changes what happens next. Your hand tightens slightly against your chest, grounding you again in your purpose. The message. It hasn't changed. Your mission hasn't changed. But the situation has. The figure moves again, just a step. Testing. Careful. Mirroring your own caution. This isn't random. This is someone who understands risk, just like you. And that makes this moment even more fragile. Because now, it's not just about survival, it's about judgment. You take a slow breath, your decision forming, not from impulse, but from everything you've learned so far. You don't step forward, you don't reveal yourself, you shift, slightly, just enough to move deeper into the cover of the trees, breaking the line where they might have sensed you. It's a quiet choice, but a deliberate one. Avoid, not engage, not here, not now. The figure pauses again, as if trying to confirm something that's no longer there. Then, slowly, they move away, not toward you, not searching aggressively, just continuing on their own path. And just like that, the moment passes, no confrontation, no words, no risk taken, only avoided. You remain still for a few seconds longer, making sure the space between you is real, not imagined. Then you rise slowly, your body easing back into motion. Your heart is still beating a little faster, your senses still sharp, but you're moving again, forward, deeper into the forest. There's a quiet realization that settles into your thoughts as you walk. Not every challenge is meant to be faced. Some are meant to be left behind, and knowing the difference might be the most important skill you've gained so far. Because ahead, somewhere beyond these trees, is your final destination, and whatever waits there will not be avoided so easily. The forest doesn't last forever. It only feels like it does. Step by step, the density begins to thin. The trees no longer pack tightly together, the light slowly returning in soft, widening patches. The shadows lose their grip, retreating as the world opens again. And then, you're through. The transition is almost quiet. One moment you're surrounded. The next, you're standing at the edge of something larger. Open land stretches ahead, but this time, it's different. Because now, in the distance, you see it clearly, not a guess, not a shape, a destination. Low stone structures, partially obscured by distance and light, sit against the horizon. A settlement. Small, but unmistakable. Smoke rises faintly into the air, thin lines drifting upward, proof of life, of presence, of people. You stop for just a second, not out of fear, not out of hesitation, but because, after everything, the road, the exhaustion, the danger, the silence. There it is. The end. Or at least, close enough to feel real. Your body reacts before your thoughts fully catch up. A subtle release of tension, a shift in your breathing. Not relief exactly, but something close. Because you're not there yet. And until you are, nothing is finished. There's a final historical truth that settles quietly into your mind. Many messengers didn't fail at the beginning of their journey. They failed at the end, not because they weren't capable, but because they believed the hardest part was already behind them. They relaxed too soon, trusted too quickly, let their guard down. Just before it mattered most, you don't make that mistake. Your steps continue, steady and controlled, as you move toward the settlement. The ground here is firmer, more worn, faint traces of repeated travel visible beneath your feet. A path, not official, but used. That's a good sign. It means connection, movement, purpose. As you get closer, more details begin to emerge. The outline of walls, not high, not fortified like a stronghold, but enough to define a boundary. Openings where people move in and out. Figures, small at this distance, shifting with the rhythm of daily life. Normal life. Something you've been far from for too long. But normal doesn't mean safe. Not for you. Not yet. Your hand moves once more to your chest, pressing lightly against the message beneath your tunic. Still there, unbroken, untouched. Everything you've done, every step, every choice, every moment of restraint. It all comes down to this. You approach slowly, not rushing the final stretch. Your eyes take in everything now. The movement near the entrance, the posture of the people, the absence or presence of weapons, reading the situation, because even here, you don't assume. A pair of figures stand near the opening in the low wall, not heavily armoured, not tense. Their posture suggests familiarity with those who pass through, watchful but not aggressive. Guards, or something close to it. Your pace slows slightly as you near them, your body language controlled, deliberate, not threatening, not overly cautious, balanced. Because how you appear now matters. There's another quiet historical detail. Messengers often relied not just on speed and endurance, but on presentation. Looking like you belong, moving like you have purpose, carrying yourself in a way that reduces suspicion rather than invites it. You understand that now, without needing to be told. The distance closes, 10 steps, 5, 2. One of the figures shifts slightly, his gaze settling on you, not hostile but assessing. Stop there. The voice is firm but not aggressive. You do, immediately. Because this is the moment. The one everything has been building toward. Slowly, carefully, you reach inside your tunic. Not suddenly, not in a way that could be mistaken, and withdraw the message. The seal catches the light. Unbroken. Clear. Authentic. You hold it out. Not too far, not too close, just enough for it to be seen. There's a pause, a brief one, but heavy. The guard steps forward, taking the message, his eyes scanning the seal before looking back at you. Another pause. Then, a nod. Small, but enough. You feel it before you fully understand it. That shift, that release. Not dramatic, not overwhelming. Just quiet. The weight you've been carrying, not just the message, but everything attached to it, begins to lift. Because it's no longer yours. You've done it. The guard turns, already moving back toward the settlement, the message in his hand now part of something larger than you again. Decisions will be made, actions taken, outcomes shaped, and you are no longer responsible. You stand there for a moment longer, your body still, your mind catching up to what just happened. There's no celebration, no recognition, no moment where anyone tells you what you've accomplished. Just completion. There's another historical truth in that. Most messengers didn't receive glory. They weren't remembered in songs or stories. Their success was measured not by praise, but by absence. The absence of failure, the absence of disaster, the quiet continuation of events. Because they did their job, you take a slow breath, deeper than any you've taken since this began, and for the first time, you let yourself relax, just slightly. Because the journey that defined you for these past hours is over. But as you stand there, watching the settlement carry on, something else settles into your thoughts. A realization that this path, this role, doesn't end here. Because somewhere else another message will need to be carried. Another road will stretch into the unknown. Another decision will need to be made. And someone, maybe even you, will step forward to take it. For now, though, you turn away from the gate, the weight gone from your chest, your steps lighter, quieter, fading, not into legend, not into memory, but into something far more common, something far more real, a life that continues, unnoticed, unrecorded, but essential. Because history doesn't just belong to kings or battles, it belongs to the ones who move between them, unseen, unremembered, and absolutely necessary.